Hey, Juan here. In today's video, we are going to talk about the difference between B2B and B2C. Why should it matter for your products, and what are the considerations that you should have when you're addressing this type of different business. So let's get started first. What is actually B2B and what is B2C? B2B is when you're actually doing a product that is a business to a business. So you're offering as a business a service or a product to a customer that is actually another business. Typically in the B2B cases, your value proposition is going to be around improving workflows, improving cost efficiencies, or increasing productivity. And then there's B2C, business to customer, where you are actually, as a company or as a business, you are actually building a product for an end user or a customer. This end customer is not going to be a company. And actually the value proposition that you are going to give to them is typically something about entertainment, but also making their lives better in some way or another. So in many cases, it's easier to actually understand the value proposition of a B2B product than it is to understand the value proposition of a B2C product. When you talk about the customer, how is it that you work with the customers between B2B and B2C? In B2B, you are going to actually look first on how you actually deliver value to your customer. As I said earlier, it's typically easier to understand how you are delivering value to a customer in a B2B product, because it's easier to understand how you are actually improving their workflows, how you are actually improving cost efficiencies, or actually improving their productivity with the products that you are building that will fit their workflows and be part of the product stack that this company or business is actually using. In B2B, you will have to define who are your user personas. So typically you're going to have different use cases for your product. So your product probably is solving different problems for different people. And here it's going to be very important that you actually identify and try to relate to those people that you are helping solving the problems, and how can you understand them as deeply as you can, and how can you engage and empathize with them so you can build these personas around these different people that you are actually selling to, and then actually understand and address better the problems that they are having. In B2C, when it comes to the customer value, it's actually going to be a quite different approach from what it's in B2B. In many cases, B2C products are built for entertainment purposes. In those cases, most of the users are not necessarily having a problem. You are just actually creating some kind of need for them to go and find that entertainment. This can be products like, for example, gaming, or it can be something like Netflix or HBO. You don't necessarily need it, but it helps you go through the day, or it helps you entertain yourself. So many times it's not about actually bringing value, but potentially solving some kind of user needs. And yes, you could say that those user needs have some kind of problem. But again, it's not so easy to identify that user need as potentially is to identify the user need in a B2B product. When it comes to the user personas, again, it's not necessarily that you have to draw user personas. It might be that there's some benefits to draw the user personas. You just want people to engage with your products. You want to make them enjoy them. And yes, true, you're going to have different customer segments that probably you could create the personas if you are creating entertainment products more for adults or for teenagers or for kids or for men or for women or whatever it is that you are choosing to be the focus area that you are having. So you can create your user personas around this type of people. One of the main differences that there's going to be between a B2C product and a B2B product is going to be the user personas. And within the user personas, there's going to be a very important differentiation where in the B2B product, you are actually always going to have a user persona that is like a decision maker. Is the person that actually can make a purchase decision, the person that will approve a budget to say that you can spend however much money into purchasing a product. Typically, this person is not going to be a user of the product. It can be in smaller companies. When you go to bigger companies, it can be somebody within it can be somebody in IT team, it can be somebody like a CFO in finance, but it's not going to be necessarily the end user that you are actually building the product for. So it's going to be very important to understand also the needs of this user persona and define him or her properly, so you can understand how you can actually tackle what are their worries, what are their problems, and how you actually, with your product, build solutions. So it might be that how are you improving the costs of the company, or how you're improving the IT, or this, how you deliver your products that is actually easy to adopt your products and actually deploy your products within the company. So it's very key to understand then the user personas when you have the B2B. In B2C, sometimes there's also the case of where you have somebody that is, the person that makes the decision is actually not the person that is going to use the product. And many times this happens with parenting control tools. So when you as a parent are purchasing a game, for example, for your kid, you as a parent, you're not going to use it, your kid cannot purchase it, but you go ahead and purchase it, and then the one that uses it is your kid. So that is almost the same situation of who is actually the decision maker and the end user not being the same person. And that's probably the closest that you can get to B2B within a B2C environment. Then when it comes to sales, it's going to be a very different process when you think about sales for B2B and sales for B2C. When it comes to sales for B2B, usually your customers are going to be willing to invest and make a process or a workflow better or improve cost efficiency. It's going to be an easier story to tell how your product is actually bringing value to the customer. On the other hand, sales processes when it comes to B2B are actually typically quite long, and they actually get weeks or even months to actually close a deal with a specific customer. It depends a lot on the volume, and it depends a lot on the size of the company. When it comes to B2C, actually the sales process is completely different. The decision typically is made quite fast. The sales process as such is not as long as it is in a B2B company. Actually, getting to do the sell, it might be much harder than it is in a B2B case. So if you think about phones, typically phones are sold to end customers, so B2C. But of course they can be also sold to companies, so it can be B2B. If we concentrate on the B2C case, where you as a consumer go and purchase a mobile phone, this decision can be relatively quickly. You probably will investigate through different channels, through different reviews, what is the phone that you want, then you go ahead, buy it, maybe you have some kind of discussion with the salesperson. Typically the decision is done relatively quickly and you can buy the product on the spot. But when it comes to other type of B2C cases, sales is actually a very hard thing to do. So think about gaming, especially think about mobile gaming. Most of the people are not going to pay for a mobile game, especially they are not going to pay tens or 20s of euros of dollars, because they don't consider that they're so important in their lives. Typically you play for a game for some months, weeks, and then you move on to the next game. So you consume those kind of products for a short period of time. So many of these products, what they rely is in advertisement, but also in-app purchasing. So small microtransactions that are typically very, very expensive when you see and you add them up of what is the value that you are getting out of those microtransactions, and also in the advertisement that happens within the games. Of course, that's another way of generating revenue. And then we move on to the usability and the engagement of the product. When you think about the usability and engagement, this can be quite different from B2B to B2C. And especially if you think about more traditional companies within B2B, it has not been a very strong focus on usability and the engagement from the users, because you're bringing so clear value to your end customer, so to the company. You don't have to put a lot of effort on making it easy to be used. This is something that I don't like as a side effect of B2B, that companies sometimes kind of ignore or not pay too much attention on the usability and the engagement that the users are having with the product. But clearly, the more value that you bring to your customer, the easier it is to use your products or to adopt. You are in a much better position than any potential competitor is against you. because you are already differentiating yourself by either making it really easy to use your product, by making it very interesting to use your product, which is going to help the company to make that decision to actually purchase your product. On the other hand, in B2C, engagement, usability, product design has been key and has been really, really important to actually engage the users to actually come and always use your products. A great example of creating engagement is Apple. Our iPhones are actually one of those products that people don't even probably question that do they want to change to another manufacturer. Whenever an iPhone breaks, they just go and buy the next version or some other version of an iPhone, but they don't consider to go to any of the potential competitors of iPhone. So clearly you can see in B2C apps where actually the usability is spot on. Typically they are very easy to use, they spend a lot of time and are very careful in actually understanding what you are trying to achieve as a user and actually make you have the best experience within their products. And if you think about the product management side, if you are a product manager, if you're working in a B2B company, most likely you are going to be required to have some kind of industry knowledge. This means that if you're going to work for finance, they are going to ask you to have some kind of finance background or understanding or having worked already in the sector. So you understand what problems are you solving. So you already understand what are the problems that the customers have, what are their pain points, how can I help them? And you don't have to learn everything from scratch. When it comes to B2C, industry knowledge might be not so key or not so important for you to start as a product manager. Because in this case, you had to interact a lot with your customers, try to understand what they want to do, try to see if the products that you're building are actually something that the users enjoy. And sometimes you can also go with quite crazy ideas and quite out of the box ideas with B2C, sometimes even more than with B2B. Because sometimes it's just a playground where you actually can think about very heavily on features like engagement or even thinking about the gamification of the experience that your users are having within your B2C products. Companies are more willing to spend the money and the effort there because it's very key then for those products to actually create the traction and the engagement for them. Whereas, as I said earlier, for B2C is not necessarily the highest priority. In the end, if you think about it, as a product manager, there's not going to be really that big difference between B2B and B2C. It's true that many times B2C is the more appealing, especially for people that are coming into product management. And B2B is seen a little bit more like the old school product management. And I'm not going to say that this is completely wrong. There's many ways of working that sometimes are more agile or more advanced in B2C than they are in B2B. But when it comes to the practices that you have as a product manager, actually it's not gonna be so different because in the end, you will have to start by understanding a problem. Get very engaged with that problem that your users are having, whoever are your users. You would then have to create ideas or solutions to solve that problem. Then you will have to do a design for that product. And then you will have to execute that solution and actually make it into a product. And once you have actually executed, then you have to go and test and get feedback from your users. And then you again go to the cycle. Do it small, do it iterative, release often, and communicate with the customers often. It's true that in some cases, B2B, you don't release so often, especially when you have hardware products and not software products. But releasing often, especially if you think about software products, is going to make your life easier when you deliver incremental value to your customers and your solution is adapting over time and actually it allows you to engage better with your users in defining the solution but providing also the best solution available for them. So how about you? Do you build products for B2B or do you build products for B2C? Or actually your company builds products for both B2B and B2C? What do you like more? What is more exciting for you? I would love to see your comments. I create this kind of videos every week. I would love to see if you like this type of content and please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this kind of content. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Remember, stay safe.